Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning and welcome. It's Nurse Richard, the Wax Wizard. Thanks for joining me. Yes, I know that introduction was a little bit dramatic, possibly a little over dramatic, but I think this removal warrants it, to be honest. I generally tend to put that introduction on when there's something spectacular to show you, and this is no different. Now this was, as the title will give it away, almost impossible. It was probably the most difficult mastoid cavity clearance I've had to do. There was a second ear in it as well of the same gentleman. He had a very difficult removal on his other ear as well, but that'll be about half an hour after this one. It took that long. So if you've not got time or you get frustrated, please either look away now, turn it off, or make sure you've got enough time to watch it all, because it is quite a long one. And the reason why it's a long one was it was very difficult. There's no other way to describe it. It was so difficult, and it was absolutely huge, this thing. I know there's a little image of it on the introduction, but this thing was big. It was as big as the end of my finger. It was almost 3 centimeters long, this thing, which is quite shocking. It's an extremely large mastoid cavity too. Now, I'd not seen this gentleman before until he came to me about a week prior to this appointment. And when he came to me, I had a go at it, and it was just too solid. It was absolutely rock solid, like a brick, and there was absolutely no way that this thing was going to come out. I had a quick go, but it was pretty clear pretty quickly that it just wasn't going to happen. And so I told him he's going to have to get some drops in here to at least soften it a little bit. So believe it or not, this is after it's been softened a little bit. You can imagine what it was like before. I'm just having a quick feel about with it, with the suction. I needed to get all kinds of tools in, pretty much all of them, to get this thing out. But what I'm doing now, I'm just kind of exploring with the suction, just to see if there's any weak spots, if it magically comes out in one go. It didn't. So I'm going to have to start getting some tools out, which is, you can see what I've done here, and I've started with the big gun, started with the Cawthorn hook. Now what you won't appreciate when I'm pulling this out is just how difficult it is, but B, how much is in there to the right hand side that you can't see. If you've never seen a mastoid cavity before, what it is, to the left hand side, all this you're seeing here is not in what was the ear canal. The ear canal is the old canal wall, and it's been removed, and all the bone around it, the mastoid bone, I think because it had an uncontrolled infection that couldn't get rid of, so they had to drill it all away. So what you can see to the left hand side as I enter, that's the eardrum to the left hand side, and the existing ear canal as it was. So what they've done, this was a good number of years ago that he had this procedure done. They took the canal wall down and drilled away all the bone, and it's left him with this humongous cavity, which is so difficult to get in, because when they do mastoid cavities, they don't make the entrance to the ear canal any wider, unfortunately. That is what it is. So you've got to imagine that it's like a straight-ish ear canal, and then where the mastoid cavity is, it's kind of here. It's like a dead end on the side of where the ear canal is. So just to get the tools and the endoscope into that area is a battle to start with. And because he's got this huge thing in there, I can't see the wall. So the wall of the cavity on the right hand side, I just can't see where it is. And you can't get to it because it's got this huge chunk of dead skin in the way. What will be quite shocking as we go on was every time I kind of lift it up and drag it, you'll see something else appearing from the right hand side. You're like, where's that coming from? But there's a good couple of centimeters that way that you can't see, and you can only begin to see it. So you see a little bit coming through there. You can only begin to see it as we start pulling it to the left hand side. Though it's not something you can do quickly, this, unfortunately. there was a subtitle to this as well. You'll see that bent my tools, and it did. You can just see the drum there, can't you? And yeah, it did. This thing was so firmly attached. You'll see why at the end. There's such a thickened layer of dead skin on it. It was shocking, and it bent the tools. Now I know that this is Neil's Rycurette, which was great. It was a godsend for this, as was the Cawthorne hook. You can see more coming now, can't you? So what you kind of do, you have to pull it a little bit, which then pulls another little bit out from the right hand side, and then try and get that bit, and then just more keeps coming. But yeah, it bent these tools, and like I said, this was one of Neil's Rycurettes, which are great. And I know he sent me some newer ones after the initial batch, and they'd been strengthened. And despite them being strengthened, this thing still bent. You can't appreciate the force I'm having to put into this. Look at that big thick layer of dead skin. The force I'm having to put into this to just lift it up, honestly, it was almost as much force as I can physically put on something with one of these tools in my hand. It was so difficult, and I needed a good shoulder rub at the end of this. Mrs. Wizard didn't oblige, unfortunately. I had to go and see a professional for that, but thankfully there's one in the room next to me, so I got my shoulder sorted out from here. But I was in absolute agony the evening after I'd done this. So what I've done there, because I've lifted it up with that curette, there's a load of soggy dead skin underneath it. So I'm just trying to see if we can actually suck that out with the suction tube there. Because it is like wet, soggy, dead skin, it's a bit easier to get a grip of with the suction. So I'm trying, and I'm pulling with all my might, as you can see. But this thing, it kind of behaves like keratosis obturans when it's like this. It does present in a very similar way, because what all this is just an accumulation of dead skin and keratin, and it just doesn't shed out of a mastoid cavity as it ordinarily would out of an ear canal. And again, I'm having to really force that up and out, but it is bending. I'm just getting my arms are hurting just looking at this again, to be honest. I've been seeing it for the first time, and you can tell how long it's been there just by how black a lot of this is. But again, I think you might see in a minute, as I manage to try and get underneath and drag this to the side again. Can you see another bit has appeared there? So then I'm going to try and get behind that. Getting to the left hand side of it is quite tricky because you literally can't see. So I think what I had to do is, like what I've just done there, is try to get underneath it and scoop up and around. But yeah, it's going to be frustrating for a lot of you to watch this. I am aware of that. I'm trying to see if I can get any purchase at the top of this either. But it's just kind of spreading it around a little bit. So as this is quite a long video, I think it's, 36 minutes long. That means we can talk about a bit of other stuff, doesn't it? Because I don't know what else I can tell you about this. Oh yeah, I was telling you it behaves like keratosis obturans before I carry on with other stuff. And if you've never seen a procedure where it's keratosis obturans, if I can explain briefly what that condition is, it's where the skin naturally sheds sideways out of most people's ear. But when people have keratosis obturans, the skin just dies and sheds where it is. So it doesn't move sideways like most people's ears do. And then you end up with this big ball of dead skin that's kind of fresher on the outside, older in the middle. And this is kind of what's happened in this mastoid cavity here. And when you get in and feel it and get in the thick of it, it kind of acts like, I know Neil's described it as a rubber ball. And this is very similar, where you can kind of pull it and then it kind of springs back into place. Because it's just clinging on to the canal wall for dear life. No amount of putting any, if I'd have put any drops in here as well, that wouldn't have made a blind bit of difference, unfortunately. It would just turn the whole thing into a mess. It would have made the camera extremely messy, and I would rather I think this is easier to get out dry with the tools, and the visibility problems that putting some oil in can cause as well. So you can see that the whole front section is starting to move a little bit. Not moving enough for my liking. But again, you'll see, as you did before, as I start to pull it to the side again, some more will appear from just round the right hand side. And just when I think that might be the edge of it, the next time I'll pull, something else will appear from that, and it's just nowhere near the edge. I'm going to try with a Cawthorn hook again. And this was pretty handy, but it did cut through it a bit because the surface layers of it are pretty soft. But I was trying to embed it a bit deeper in, but it just kind of rips it apart a little bit, which is still serving its purpose a little bit. It's like knocking down a house. You've got to remove a few bricks before you can knock down the house. Now that grip there I thought was good, but again, you can see after I've let go, it kind of springs back into place. Yeah, very difficult. So what else can I tell you about? Because we've got a lot of time to talk. You'll see an ongoing battle with this. But like I said, there's only so much I can already tell you about it that you don't already know. So you carry on watching me having an argument with this, and we'll have a chat about some other stuff. If you've never watched my channel before, you're thinking, well, why is he doing that? Well, why not? It just makes these things a bit more interesting for me and for you, because there's only so much I can tell you about what's going on right now. You can see what I'm doing. And it's painstaking. So what else can I tell you? What's going on in my world? I had been not threatening, that's probably the wrong use of the word, telling you all that I was going to be starting a podcast soon, and with everything else that had been going on, that I kind of took a back seat. But I am now, I've got the first episode planned. First guests are invited on a date this coming weekend. We're going to record it. If you're wondering why I've started doing that kind of thing, well, why not? I'm really I know a lot of weird and wonderful people who've got some fascinating stories, and I thought you guys might like to hear them as well, because there's nothing as not as queer as folk, as they're saying around here, and everybody's got some stories to tell. So I'm going to start that, and I've got my first guest lined up this Saturday. We're going to record it. When it's going to be released, I don't know, because these things generally take a lot longer to edit than they do for this one. I'm going to post them on this channel to start with, and then going forward, I'll probably open up a second channel where it'll be just the podcasts and the interviews with some wonderfully weird people. Will be opening up again, but for the time being, they will be posted on here. And if you don't want to watch them, you just come in here for the ears, and well, that's fine. Just watch the ears. If you see a thumbnail with it looks like not ears, that it's a podcast, then don't watch it. It's as simple as that. So the first guest I'm going to invite is my dad and his mates, and there's a very good reason for that, because my dad and his mates, he's always been involved in music. It's where I get my musical interest from. I was a musician in a former life. I was a music teacher. I was in bands since I could walk and talk. Really, I was always in bands, and that's because of my dad. And my dad's in this band at the moment, like an acoustic type band. He's been in rock bands and stuff all his life, but recently he's joined forces with a couple of quite well-known musicians around here. And he's been going out doing a few small venues, just doing some acoustic songs. And they've all got amazing backgrounds. these two other chaps. Now, my dad's got a very interesting background anyway, because my dad is in his mid-70s now and still going out and doing this. God bless him. But his background was he's obviously from round here, but him and my mum moved to London in the mid to late 60s because he was interested in music and was in some bands, and obviously that's where it was all happening. So my dad was in and around the swinging 60s in London, and I know he's got a lot of tales, met a lot of people, and I think you might find a lot of those very interesting. So that's what he did meet some extremely famous people. I'm not going to name drop. I'm going to save them for the episode. But the other two members of his band that is in it are equally just interesting, but very different as well. Because the other guy, the guy who does the singing, he's from Liverpool. He's a Scouser, and he stayed in Liverpool at the time, probably more so in the late 60s, early 70s. And so he was in and around the Merseybeat scene. So I know he's got some interesting stories too. And he did meet some incredibly famous people, probably some of the most famous people in the world. Now, if you know anything about the Merseybeat scene and musicians in Liverpool, you might know where I'm going with that one. So I know he's got some stories about them. And the third one, the third chap who plays bass for them, he actually plays everything. He's a very talented musician. He's been involved in music all his life, self-taught, but where his stories are going to be interesting for you is he worked for the BBC. And he worked for the BBC as a film and television a producer and director. And I think he also worked on radio as well. And part of his job was interviewing celebrities. So I know he's going to have, I already know he's already told me some of them. He's going to have some quite amazing stories to tell as well. So stay tuned for that. I think you're going to enjoy the first episode. So it might well be out a few weeks after you see this, if I can get my head around the editing of it all. This is easy to do, just one camera, but there's multiple cameras and microphones involved in the other one, so it might take me a bit longer to throw it together, but hopefully you enjoy us all having a bit of a chat, and you might learn something that you didn't know before, and we'll share some interesting stories. As you can see, I'm using Neil's double-ended tool here, which is really invaluable. It means you don't have to keep coming in and out of someone's ear. You can use the hook on one end and you can use the curette on the other end, and it's an absolute godsend. But as you can see, I'm still slowly, it seems like I'm getting nowhere, but I promise I am. The payoff is spectacular with this as well, I've got to tell you. You'll be shocked at when this thing eventually does start coming to the side, just how thick the layer of dead skin is that was holding this all in. It was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. What else can I tell you about what's going on? I'm still training for my run, for those of you who don't know. I'm doing the Great Manchester Run in aid of the Children's Hospital that supported my daughter through her recent issues. Probably let myself down a bit this last week. I've only run once. I've been trying to do it 3 or 4 times a week. But my body just didn't feel like it, to be honest. And I probably let myself down even more because I went to Blackpool yesterday. Blackpool is a very old traditional seaside resort, not far away from us. We only live about a 30-40 minute drive away from it, on the coast. You'll know it's famous for the tower, but it's probably just as famous for the terribly unhealthy food that everybody eats when they go there. So I really let myself down. I had too many bags of chips, too many fried donuts, and too many sweets and sticks of rock. So I'm going to get back on it this week, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for those of you who are asking. Yeah, the training is going, on the most part, okay. I'm able to run at least 5 miles every few days now. So, and I couldn't do that before. So that's what I'm spending a lot of my time doing. What I'm not spending a lot of my time doing now a few of you will know, or most of you have been watching me for ages. A big part of my life is I coach a rugby team who are 13 years old now. Coached them since they were 7 years old. And it takes up a lot of time, and it's extremely stressful a lot of the time. Look at all this more stuff coming. I was telling you about earlier. As soon as you pull a little bit out, more comes, and you think, well, where does this end? It does end eventually. So yeah, my son's always played for this team. It's part of the reason why I became part of the coaching team, because he played with he joined the team first, and then they needed a coach, and I said, oh yeah, go on, I'll help out. Before you know it, you're roped in, and spending all this time doing this coaching, which is, like I said, very difficult, very time consuming. But my son decided a couple of weeks ago that he's kind of had enough of it. He doesn't really want to do it anymore. I think a lot of the reason for that is he hasn't grown as much as the other boys have. He's always been quite small for his age, but a lot of the boys who are playing are looking up. I'm looking up at them, and they're like men, a lot of them, and they're only 13, and so it's becoming increasingly difficult for him, because he just didn't have that, not yet anyway. I'm sure he will have that growth spurt soon, but he just found it almost impossible. They were just running over the top of him all the time, and he's like, oh, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. Maybe he'll go back to it when he has a bit more of a growth spurt, who knows. Or maybe rugby's just not for him, which is fine. But then that meant I had a bit of a decision to make, because to commit yourself to doing something which involves like usually 3 nights a week and 1 day the weekend is what I used to spend coaching the team. And I thought, well, if none of my family is going to be there, i.e. my son's not playing as well, that's a long time to spend away from your family, kind of. And I thought, that's probably a bit too much for me, so I decided to step down from coaching as well. Which is a difficult decision to make, but ultimately the right one, because family always comes first, and that's a long time to spend away from them if none of them are involved in it. But I am still involved in it. I played my first game. We play our version of old man rugby, which I had my first game yesterday. Scored the opening try of the season as well, which was good. I've not lost it. But yeah, I won't be coaching anymore, but I will be going along to watch the boys and support them whenever I can. So obviously it has been a big part of my life for a long time now. But that does mean it's freed up our time, which is great. I kind of feel like I've got my weekends back. So we've got a lot of big plans as to what to do with the weekends now. We've got a lot of time back. And one of them is just to go away more, spend more time together. And so that's why we had a nice day trip out yesterday to Blackpool, which went okay. My daughter was very frustrated that she's not allowed on roller coasters yet, unfortunately, because it's famous for a very big amusement park. But I had to explain to her that you can't go on them yet. I'm really sorry. It's just too risky. Until she's had more investigations into her heart condition. You don't want to be passing out or having a heart attack on a roller coaster, because she's not supposed to do things that increase her adrenaline. She was frustrated by that, understandably. But hopefully in time, that's something else that we can begin to introduce. Look at this thick layer of skin on that. Thanks for sticking with it, by the way. If you're still here and still watching it, you might be thinking, this should have been out ages ago. It's really not easy. It's really not. Oh yeah, so that's what we're trying to plan is lots of weekends away. And I need your help for this, because I'd like to think I'm quite well travelled. I've been to most countries in Europe and most of the major cities. But I did a lot of that before I met my wife. So I want to take them back to some of the places I've been to, but it's bonkers the way that travel works and the costs of it these days, because it costs less to fly to like a European city like Paris, Barcelona, Brussels, wherever you go, somewhere that's only like an hour or two away on a flight. It costs less to do that than it does to get a taxi to like Manchester, which is 10 miles away. It's madness. So we're going to go on a lot of European city breaks. So if you've got any, I know a lot of people watch me in Europe, so if you're in one and I think your city has something to offer and you think we should come and visit it, then let us know, because we've got this free time on our hands that we're going to get out and about and see more of the world. The ones that I've already been to, if you're thinking of commenting on them, I will briefly tell you. So I've been to Paris, Barcelona, Madrid, Brussels, one in Poland, I can't remember the name of, Gdansk. I went to Tallinn in Estonia. That was lovely. Vienna in Austria. I've been to Zurich in Switzerland. Not been to many places in Italy. That might be something that I'll be interested in. So all those places I've been before. I want to go somewhere that I've not been before. So leave me some suggestions as to which you think are the best city breaks in Europe for me and me to take the family. Now we're finally beginning to get somewhere with this, and the key to this is this huge thick sheet of skin you can see to the right hand side of that, and we've just got a corner of it there. Now because I know what's coming up, I know that is the end of it. I just need to get that bit yanked away from I say canal wall. It's not the canal wall, is it? It's the new canal wall. But it is shocking when this bit gets hooked away what appears, and you will see it very shortly. It's probably the thickest dead layer of skin I think I've possibly ever seen. Difficult because it is squishy and mushy, this, so it's difficult to get a reasonable grip in this. But I think I've just pulled it in a bit deeper. You can begin to see the extent of it now, can't you? So we've already almost filled the existing canal with what I've already pulled out from the right to the left, and now the very last bit is just about to rear its ugly head. I think I resorted to this tool as well because I couldn't handle the other tools being bent. This is obviously stainless steel, this one, a lot harder to bend. Here it comes, and it will glare because it's such a thick dead sheets of white skin. Look at that, it's absolutely unbelievable. And what you're seeing there is the reason why this was so difficult to get out. It's such a thick deadened layer of dead skin completely encased in this, and that was completely stuck to the canal wall. But I think this one warranted a sound effect as well, because when it comes out, I think I've already put one in, and it's a boing, because when you see it finally being pulled out, there's lots of images and videos of it afterwards as well. You don't get a clear view. It came out, and then the pressure of the last bit just went bang like that. You'll get to see it in a second. Have a look at the tail of it flapping about as soon as it's pulled out. A quick wiggle. It's coming. Watch for the boing as it comes out. Boing. There you go. Yeah. Did you see that? Yes, a shockingly large plug of dead skin and keratin that's come out of this mastoid cavity. Don't forget there is a second ear. The gentleman's second ear was a very difficult for a different reason, and there it is, just short of probably that single piece there, just short of 3 centimeters long, which for an ear canal is pretty big, and it's the width of it as well. It was absolutely humongous, probably the biggest single piece of anything I've pulled out of anyone's mastoid cavity. There it is against my finger. Now have a look at your own finger. That's my little finger, granted. Have a look at your own finger and think, the size of that, what's just been pulled out of there. It does clear up in a minute. This canal and cavity has not seen the light of day for a while, so it's kind of been given a chance to breathe now. And so it's fogged up the camera a little bit. It does clear up. There is still a few little bits and bats of dead skin everywhere. But as soon as I pulled that out, he felt a bit funny. Not surprising, really, after everything that he'd just been through, and to have this huge thing pulled out must have been a bit of a shock to his ear, to his brain, to everything. And he's like, whoa, he just felt weird. He couldn't explain it. Not necessarily dizzy. He said, you're going to have to give me a minute. So we had to wait a minute before starting his other ear, which is this one, which is just as difficult for different reasons. So there's no need to carry on in that ear. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one. But his other ear was actually giving him more symptoms, believe it or not. Because all he felt in the ear with the mastoid cavity was like a feeling of pressure. Not surprising, really, when you just see what's come out of it. But his hearing was okay in it because his ear canal wasn't blocked and you could see his eardrum, or what's left of his eardrum. But what he had in his other ear was completely blocking his eardrum, and it was so deep down as well. Quite a long ear canal, and I had to use quite a small tube because it was so deep in his ear, this. And it was quite difficult to get into as well. And when I first looked at it, it was baffling me. I thought the white bit there, is that kind of an old layer of the eardrum that's like still on the eardrum? Because it was that deep. I don't know how close I am to the eardrum here. And I thought at first glance that white layer there was possibly part of the eardrum with some thickened dead skin on it. But it wasn't, which is why I was avoiding it at the moment, just in case. Now, I don't know how this has ended up like this as well. If you're asking me that, how's it ended up like this? Is it keratosis obturans? I don't know. Never seen this chap before, so I don't know how he's ended up with this another thickened layer of dead skin, but right on top of his eardrum. And maybe it's the case that it's just been a failure to shed out of that area there, because as you know, when you get to the eardrum, it goes a bit narrower, it goes a bit wider, and even the top layer of the eardrum sheds, and there's that shedding sideways and trying to get in those recesses and out the canal. Maybe it just gets a bit trapped there and then builds up. That might have been happening, but it'll be a bit more obvious, I think, when I see him for the next time. Could have also been that this was also a lot more lateral, a lot more nearer to the outside world, and he's in desperation bunged a load of drops in there, and it slipped down and then solidified again down there. Who knows? But it was a tricky thing. I told you before that I hadn't seen this chap before, and I hadn't. But I did ask him how long it was since he last had anything done with either of his ears, and I think it was about 3 years. Now, I'll be honest, his mastoid cavity looks like, I don't know, that had been there longer than 3 years. Whether someone had just cleared the ear canal and thought, oh, that's too difficult, I'll have a quick go, but I don't think I can get what's out there in the cavity. That might be the case there, and that might have been there longer. Who knows? But I have said I'd rather see him sooner than another 3 years. Ideally, I want to have a look at it in 6 months, just to see what's happening. This took some pulling as well. Managed to get a decent grip, but obviously because it's a small tube I'm having to use, and that's because of how deep it is in his ear, and it was difficult to fit anything bigger in. Slightly restricted on the power. But you can see where it's attached, can't you? You can see the sheet of skin that it's kind of unravelling now as I'm pulling it forward. I think it came out in one go, if I remember rightly. It's got a little trapped at the entrance there as I've tried to pull it through. Let's grab it again, give it a little wiggle. And I don't think it looked too bad. His eardrum after this. There's a few little flakes here and there. Nothing significant. But he was a very relieved, there we go. Very relieved chap. Yeah, like I said, there is a few little flakes there, but after this, after doing that, I mean, that took a while in itself, but obviously his cavity took even longer. he'd been through enough. So I said, we'll leave it there. It's more than enough. Anyway, thanks for sticking with it. If you managed to watch this for the entirety of 30-odd 5 minutes long, thanks for being patient. I hope you enjoyed the payoff at the end. If you do enjoy what we do, feel free to subscribe to the channel, click us a like, put us a comment down below, and if you really like what we do, you can consider becoming a member of the channel. But for now, I hope you enjoyed that. But for now, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later. Ta-da.